Okay, well, good morning. Lesson 41 of a workbook of A Course in Miracles. God goes with me wherever I go. And I think this lesson really requires that we take a good, long, hard look at it. As it says, throughout the day, use today's idea. Throughout the day, use today's idea, repeating it very slowly and preferably with closed eyes. And think of what you're saying and what the words mean. God goes with me wherever I go. So it really does bear our paying attention to the words today of the lesson as it's expressed by Jesus. Today's idea will eventually overcome completely the sense of loneliness and abandonment which all the separated ones experience. Depression is an inevitable consequence of separation. So our anxiety, worry, a deep sense of helplessness, misery, suffering, an intense fear of loss. Now, I'm sure each and every one of us has an understanding of what those things are because we seem to face them daily. And I'm not sure where each of you are in your own practice, but there are things that go on in the world each and every day that have the tendency to bring these things up. And remember, it's not wrong that we experience them. They can serve as a reminder as to why we've picked up A Course in Miracles in the first place, and why these lessons can be so valuable as we do them the way they're set out to be done. So today, there's only going to be one long practice period. It's only going to be 5 minutes. And of course, if you can go a little bit longer than the 5 minutes, feel free to do so. But I think it's important to really take a good, hard read at this one. Separated ones have invented many cures for what they believe to be the ills of the world, but the one thing they do not question is the reality of the problem. And the next line is very telling. Yet, if its effects cannot be cured because it is not real, the reality of the problems that we're having is what we need to question. Especially if it's true that God goes with me wherever I go. And when you have your experience of God, and as you have any type of contact with your own reality, you begin to understand that reality could never have been lost. And it's always waiting within us right where we left it. We may have broken our communication for a second, but it's entirely possible that communication be restored. As a matter of fact, toward the end of the lesson, we're told it is quite possible to reach God. In fact, it's very easy because it is the most natural thing in the world. And it's right about there where many of you are ready to pick up the book and throw it across the room, because it certainly doesn't seem to be natural, and it certainly doesn't seem to be easy. And certainly if it was that easy and that natural, why would you need to be doing these lessons in the first place? So, but it's important that we really consider what's being offered to us and what's being said here today. There's some interesting lines too. You might even say it's the only natural thing in the world. The way will open up if you believe that it is possible. And I want to assure you, it is possible. If it was possible for me, a person who thought prior to my initial contact with God, while being in the state of separation, that we're all in here, in space and time, if it was possible for me, in the condition I was in the state of mind I was in, to give up my thinking simply because I recognized it wasn't getting me anywhere and I no longer wanted the effects of it. If it was possible for me in a moment of abject surrender to reach God and allow God to make his presence known to me, it's possible and quite natural for each and every one of you, because God goes with you wherever you go. This exercise can bring very startling results, even the first time is it attempted, and sooner or later it is always successful. We will go into more detail in connection with this kind of practice as we go along, but it will never fail completely, and instant success is possible. So don't worry. That's what this whole lesson is about. In fact, these lessons aren't designed to increase your worry and increase the judgment you've already laid upon yourself. They're designed to help you alleviate the worry and the judgment that you've laid upon yourself by the willingness to let these words be true. When Jesus was speaking to Helen, especially in the beginning, Helen was quite not only doubtful, but in a state of misunderstanding what was being expressed. So Jesus went to great lengths to help her explain things to her in a way that would turn her mind around so she could see quite reasonably why this was true. And from my own experience and my own contact with God, and from my own experience with Jesus as my teacher, there's never been a promise that Jesus has made to me that has not been kept. So when he says this can bring quite startling results, very startling results, even the first time is it attempted, and sooner or later it will always be successful. It will never fail completely, and instant success is quite possible. Feel free to believe him, and that's what he's asking for. In spite of the condition you find yourself in this apparent world of space and time, without questioning the reality of the problem from the perspective that we're being offered by Jesus, we will continue to invent solutions to problems that don't exist, failing to recognize the true cure for the problem that we're having, by allowing the world to be an illusion and allowing ourselves to sink down deep within where we have hidden God and seemed to lost our connection to our source of meaning, our source of life, and our source of companionship, which is what this course is offering us. Yet its effects cannot be cured because it is not real. The idea for today has the power to end all this foolishness forever. And foolishness it is, despite the serious and tragic forms it may take. Deep within you is everything that is perfect, ready to radiate through you and out into the world. It will cure all sorrow and pain and fear and loss, because it will heal the mind that thought these things were real and suffered out of allegiance to those beliefs. Now, there's an admission here, a tacit admission, that you must make that you've actually been in allegiance to beliefs that haven't served the purpose of reestablishing your contact with God, and yet that haven't served that purpose, and yet you're being offered the ability to have your mind and your heart serve this new purpose, wherein which God goes with you wherever you go, and so the ability to sink down into the reality that that statement represents is available at each and every moment. As I was saying before, early on in the course when Jesus was talking to Helen, he made a statement to her, and he said, I've made every effort to utilize words that are unambiguous and whose meaning cannot be lost or misunderstood. And so this is another attempt on his part to utilize words in a very clear and definite way that are offering you back the power of your mind and the truth of who you are in an experiential way, not just in a way that the ego has been utilizing the power to prove things as right and wrong, but as a way to cure the effects of the situation in your experience of them, based on the fact that God goes with me wherever I go, simply because God is deep within me, under the clouds of obscurity that I've hidden it, and that I use to confuse myself. To this day, in spite of the many revelatory experiences that I've had, in spite of the forgiveness that I've enacted and utilized, there are still moments and times when the temptation to feel that these problems are real and the effects are insurmountable, and in a sense not being capable of being dealt with on terms that the world seems to present these problems to us on, arise. And the reason why we're not able to deal with the problems that the world presents us within the terms that the problems seem to be existing in is because of the unreality of the problem altogether and the inability to solve effects of unreal problems by thinking that the effects make the problem real. The effects of the problems that we seem to have no reality, and yet because we experience them, we find it necessary to deal with the effects, attempting to solve the problem. And what this is saying is those problems are not solvable because they are not real, and your only solace is going to be to enter into an experience of your own reality and begin to express yourself from that, from the certainty that God goes with me wherever I go. So therefore, it's quite natural to be able to contact our Heavenly Father who is right here with us. Because remember, as Jesus has said, you are the kingdom of heaven. So therefore, the kingdom goes with you wherever you go. You can never be deprived of your perfect holiness because its source goes with you wherever you go. You can never suffer because the source of all joy goes with you wherever you go. You can never be alone because the source of all life goes with you wherever you go. Nothing can destroy your peace of mind because God goes with you wherever you go. So obviously one of the things that this is pointing to is even in our states where we're seemingly desperate and experience of desperation as an effect of trying to live life on life's terms in this mundane, day-to-day temporal, spatial world. Even the the suffering of those effects have not deprived us of the peace of mind and the companionship that were offered by this lesson. And yet, we seem to use the effects to prove that is true, when we're being told we can sink down to where we've never lost our real, whole, perfect mind. We can sink down into that and allow that experience to offer us proof of who we truly are, in the recognition that no matter what we seem to have been reduced to in this world of space and time, that self is not a real self and has never, ever deprived God of his Son, so the Son has never been deprived of his Father. We understand that you do not believe all this. How could you, when the truth is hidden deep within, under a heavy cloud of insane thoughts, dense and obscuring, yet representing all you see? Today we will make our first real attempt to get past this dark and heavy cloud and to go through it to the light beyond. This is where there will only be one longer practice period today for about 5 minutes when you first get up in the morning. And then throughout the day, use the idea often, repeating it slowly, preferably with eyes closed. Think of what the words mean. Bring some mindfulness to the repetition of the idea. Think of what the words mean. Concentrate on the holiness which they imply about you. On the unfailing companionship which is yours. It's not yours because you seem to suffer from effects of unreal problems. The effects cannot deprive you of what's eternally yours. The ego and the world around you would love for you to continue in your preoccupation with attempting to live life on life's terms rather than to live life based on the terms of the reality from which you were created. So therefore, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when, as your practice of these lessons begins to offer you true experiences and true effects, don't be surprised if the ego presents more and more desperate and dire consequences and situations because it wants your attention. It wants you to give the same attention to it as Jesus is asking you to attend to and give attention to these lessons, because without your attention, without your identification with it, it has absolutely no power over you. Concentrate on the holiness which they imply about you, on the unfailing companionship which is yours, on the complete protection that surrounds you. You can indeed afford to laugh at fear thoughts, remembering that God goes with you wherever you go. So remember, you have not been deprived of reality. Nothing you have ever done or thought you've done has deprived you of that reality. Instant success is available to you, and yet even the slightest effort that you give it will bring some sort of Does Jesus say? It will never fail completely. Do this as it's outlined for the simple reason that you have experienced yourself as lonely and abandoned, in depression, with anxiety, with worry, with a deep sense of helplessness, misery, suffering, and intense fear of loss. If any of those things have been part of your experience of this life, then this course was written for you, because God goes with you wherever you go, and sooner or later you can afford to laugh at fear thoughts, remembering that God goes with you wherever you go. Remember, it's not saying that you will not have fear thoughts. It's saying you'll be able to afford to laugh at them, because you're beginning to recognize the unreality of the source of those fear thoughts as we reestablish our connection with our own divinity, having previously been confined to our idea that we're separate from each other and separate from God. So God goes with you wherever you go. God goes with me wherever I go. Let's practice this lesson the way it was designed to be practiced, and God bless us, each and every one.